The Conjuring, Curse of La Llorona. Chapter 1. The Haunting Begins. The Garcia family lived in a quiet, picturesque town in the heart of New Mexico. Their home, a charming adobe house with a white picket fence, was surrounded by vibrant desert blooms. Life had been peaceful until the dark presence of La Llorona began to haunt their nights. It all started on a warm, moonlit evening. The clock in the living room chimed midnight, and the soft rustle of a breeze through the curtains whispered serenity. Nestled under cozy quilts, the Garcia family slept peacefully. At the center of their quaint home, a photo of a radiant mother, father, and their three children stood as a testament to the love they once shared. However, a mournful wail cut through the silence, an eerie lament that chilled the air. The Garcias awoke, their faces bathed in a pale glow from the full moon. The sound of their daughter, Isabella, weeping reached their ears. Rushing to Isabella's room, they found her standing by the window, tears streaming down her terrified face. She pointed at the glass, her tiny hand shaking. "Mommy, there's a lady outside," she whispered. In the moonlight, they saw her, a spectral figure cloaked in a flowing white gown, her hair dripping wet, and her face obscured by shadows. La Llorona, the weeping woman, stood just beyond the window, her mournful gaze fixed upon the child. Her voice, an anguished lament, resonated through the room, sending shivers down the spines of the Garcias. Frantic, Mr. Garcia rushed to the window, but La Llorona's spectral form melted away like mist, leaving behind only the haunting echo of her wails. They were left with an overwhelming sense of dread, a foreboding that would hang over their family like a dark cloud. It was that very night that they wrote a desperate letter to the renowned paranormal investigators, Ed and Lorraine Warren. They recounted the tale of La Llorona's chilling visitations and their missing daughter, Isabella. They pleaded for help, for an end to the torment that had taken over their lives. The letter found its way to the Warrens, who, after reading the distressing words, knew that they had to act. Ed and Lorraine Warren had faced countless horrors, but this case was unlike any other. It was a dark force deeply rooted in the region's folklore, and it called for their unique expertise. And so, their journey began. With the letter clutched in Lorraine's hand, they set out for New Mexico, their hearts heavy with the knowledge that they were about to confront an ancient curse that had once again come to life. The haunting of the Garcia family was only the beginning, a chilling prelude to a nightmare that threatened to engulf them all. Chapter 2. Lorraine's Ominous Vision. The New Mexican landscape unfolded before them as Ed drove their weathered station wagon into the small, tranquil town. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the adobe buildings. The town felt timeless, steeped in tradition and folklore that had been passed down through generations. Upon their arrival, the Warrens were met with wary but curious townsfolk who had heard rumors of their visit. The Garcias had reached out to them in a desperate attempt to banish the curse of La Llorona. As the investigators made their way through the winding streets to the Garcia residence, the weight of anticipation hung heavy in the air. Lorraine sat in the passenger seat, her thoughts consumed by the chilling vision that had haunted her since they received the Garcia's letter. She had seen the ghostly figure of La Llorona, her white gown billowing like a shroud in the darkness. But it was more than just a spectral sighting. Lorraine had felt a deep connection to the spirit, a connection that was as mysterious as it was unsettling. As they approached the Garcia home, Lorraine's unease grew. She knew that this case was different, and her psychic abilities hinted at a darkness more profound than they had ever encountered. She saw glimpses of a woman, once beautiful and full of life, now consumed by sorrow and rage. Lorraine shared her visions with Ed, describing the tortured spirit of La Llorona in vivid detail. She spoke of a time long ago when La Llorona had been a loving mother, a woman who had suffered a terrible loss that had driven her to madness. The tragic tale of a mother who, in a fit of despair, had drowned her own children haunted Lorraine's mind. The connection Lorraine felt to La Llorona was as inexplicable as it was undeniable. She knew that this restless spirit was bound by guilt, condemned to weep for eternity. The weight of the centuries of sorrow had turned her into a malevolent force, tormenting those she believed had wronged her. Ed listened intently, his eyes never leaving the road, his mind racing with the implications of Lorraine's revelations. They were dealing with a spirit that was not just a malevolent force, but a tragedy in itself. La Llorona was not merely a vengeful ghost. She was a mother who had lost her children, a soul forever marked by despair. Arriving at the Garcia residence, Lorraine's sense of purpose was unwavering. She knew they had to confront La Llorona and put her soul to rest. The eerie weeping that had plagued the family for so long needed to be silenced, and the curse lifted. Together, the Warrens stepped out of their car, ready to face the darkness that lay ahead. Their determination to uncover the truth behind the curse of La Llorona had only grown stronger, fueled by Lorraine's haunting connection to the spirit and the knowledge that the Garcias' lives hung in the balance. Chapter 3: The Garcia Family's Desperation. The Garcia family's adobe home stood as a sanctuary amidst the eeriness that had descended upon their lives. As the Warrens approached, they could see the telltale signs of a family in turmoil: curtains drawn tightly, religious symbols adorning the walls, and a palpable sense of fear that clung to the very air. Mr. and Mrs. Garcia met the Warrens at the door, their faces etched with worried lines and sleepless nights. The mother, her eyes swollen from countless tears, clasped her hands together in a gesture of pleading desperation. Her husband, his once strong countenance now weighed down by the terror that had engulfed his family, welcomed the investigators inside. The living room was dimly lit, and the air hung heavy with the suffocating presence of La Llorona. Their two remaining children, a teenage boy and his younger sister, clung to their parents, their expressions a mixture of fear and sadness. Lorraine felt an overwhelming sadness as she gazed upon them. Mrs. Garcia spoke first, her voice trembling. "Thank you for coming. You must help us, please. She's taken our Isabella, and we don't know where she is." Lorraine and Ed exchanged a solemn glance. It was one thing to face a malevolent spirit, but the abduction of a child was an unimaginable nightmare. Lorraine's psychic abilities had already given her a glimpse of the truth, but they needed to hear the family's account. The Garcias recounted their harrowing experiences with La Llorona. They spoke of the sleepless nights filled with the sound of weeping, the terrifying apparitions of the ghostly woman, and the moments when Isabella had been inexplicably drawn to her. They described the feeling of being watched and the inescapable dread that now haunted their home. As they listened, Lorraine's empathetic abilities allowed her to sense the family's anguish. She could feel the mother's guilt for not having protected her children, the father's helplessness in the face of an unimaginable force, and the children's profound loss. And in the center of it all was Isabella, the missing piece of the puzzle. Lorraine's intuition whispered to her, confirming what she had seen in her visions. Isabella was not just a victim, she was the target. The connection between the young girl and La Llorona was the linchpin of this malevolent haunting, and they needed to act swiftly to save her. Ed and Lorraine exchanged another meaningful look, their resolve unshaken. They knew that they had to help the Garcia family and, above all, find Isabella. They offered reassurance to the family and promised that they would do everything in their power to put an end to the torment and reunite them with their missing daughter. As the Warrens delved deeper into the twisted web of the curse, they couldn't help but feel the weight of responsibility that had fallen upon their shoulders. The dark presence of La Llorona was relentless, but so were the Warrens, determined to confront the curse and put an end to the terror that had befallen the Garcia family. Chapter 4: Uncovering the Legend. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the New Mexican landscape as Ed and Lorraine retreated to a cozy, candlelit room at their lodgings. Outside, the town seemed to hold its breath, as if waiting to reveal the secrets of La Llorona. Sitting across from one another, they opened a weathered, leather-bound book that they had brought with them. It was filled with tales and legends passed down through generations. These were the stories that held the key to understanding the curse that had plagued the Garcia family. The book told of a woman named Maria, a young and beautiful bride who had once lived in the region centuries ago. Her love for her children was unmatched, but it was her devotion to her own vanity that would be her downfall. The townspeople marveled at her beauty, and she reveled in their attention. Maria's obsession with her looks consumed her, and she would often neglect her children to spend hours by the river, gazing at her reflection. One fateful day, as she admired herself in the still waters, a dark, ominous figure appeared behind her. It was Death himself, coming to claim her young children as punishment for her neglect. The legend spoke of Maria's desperate plea to save her children, but her cries fell on deaf ears. In a fit of madness, she drowned her own children, sending their souls into the afterlife, where they would never know peace. When she realized the gravity of her actions, Maria's grief was unbearable, and she, too, met a tragic end. Her restless spirit was said to roam the land, condemned to search for her lost children, her anguished wails echoing through the night. It was the birth of La Llorona, the weeping woman, a malevolent force that would go on to haunt those who crossed her path. As Ed and Lorraine read the legend, a heavy silence enveloped them. The tragedy of Maria's story, a mother driven to madness by her own vanity and the loss of her children, was far more sinister and heartbreaking than they had anticipated. It was a tale of darkness and sorrow that had endured for centuries, and it was now a curse that plagued the Garcia family. Lorraine, her psychic abilities as keen as ever, felt a deep connection to Maria's anguish. She saw fleeting images of the grieving mother, her hair disheveled and her eyes filled with torment. It was as if Maria's spirit was reaching out to her, pleading for release. The Warrens realized that to confront La Llorona, they needed to delve deeper into the history and lore of the town. The secrets of the curse were hidden within the stories passed down through generations, and only by uncovering the truth could they hope to break the curse and free the Garcia family from the grip of the vengeful spirit. Their investigation had only just begun, and the truth they sought was shrouded in centuries of sorrow and despair. But Ed and Lorraine were undeterred, ready to face the darkness that lay ahead as they pieced together the puzzle of La Llorona's origins. Chapter 5: A Growing Threat. As Ed and Lorraine delved deeper into the legend surrounding La Llorona, the malevolent spirit seemed to grow bolder, its presence increasingly palpable. The town, once a haven of tranquility, now echoed with whispers of the weeping woman. The locals, while wary of the investigators' mission, knew that the curse had taken hold of the Garcia family, and the threat was becoming undeniable. It was on the fifth night of their investigation that La Llorona's dark influence began to manifest more forcefully. The full moon bathed the town in a silver glow, casting eerie shadows that danced on the adobe walls. In the midst of their research, a mournful wail pierced the stillness of the night. It was not the distant, faint sound the Garcias had described, but a haunting cry that seemed to come from within the very room they were in. Lorraine's heart clenched as she recognized the sound. It was the weeping of La Llorona. The investigators had felt her presence in their bones since they arrived, but now she was making herself known. They shared a tense look, their determination unwavering, but the room was filled with an oppressive chill. They knew that La Llorona was not a spirit to be taken lightly. The wailing continued, growing louder and more insistent, as if the spirit was drawing near. The temperature dropped further, and the candles flickered wildly, casting grotesque shadows on the walls. In the dim light, they saw a figure forming, a ghostly woman in a tattered white gown. Lorraine felt her pulse quicken, and Ed instinctively reached for the cross he wore around his neck. They knew that this was not just a haunting, it was a confrontation with a spirit consumed by rage and despair. La Llorona's mournful cries filled the room, and Ed and Lorraine could see the anguish in her spectral eyes. She was not just a faceless entity, she was a mother who had lost her children and had become a tormented soul in the afterlife. As the tension in the room escalated, the weeping woman moved closer to them. Her outstretched hand reached out, almost as if she were pleading for help. But her touch was as cold as death, and her presence sent a shiver down their spines. The investigators knew that the threat was real, and the Garcias' pleas for help were not exaggerated. La Llorona's relentless pursuit of the family had reached a critical point. The urgency of the situation could not be denied any longer. With a shared resolve, Ed and Lorraine Warren knew that they needed to act quickly to protect the Garcia family from the vengeful spirit. The growing threat of La Llorona had become an undeniable reality, and their mission had become a race against time to banish the curse and save the family from the darkness that threatened to consume them. Chapter 6: A Confrontation with Darkness. The night was thick with tension as Ed and Lorraine prepared for a seance in an attempt to communicate with the restless spirit of La Llorona. The Garcia family huddled together in their dimly lit living room, each of them clutching a religious symbol for protection. The atmosphere was fraught with apprehension, as if the very air was holding its breath, aware that the weeping woman was close. Candles flickered, casting eerie, dancing shadows on the walls. A sense of foreboding hung heavily in the room as Ed and Lorraine began the ancient ritual. Lorraine sat at the center of the room, her fingers lightly touching the wooden planchette of a vintage Ouija board. She closed her eyes, allowing her psychic abilities to connect with the spirit world. The room seemed to grow colder, and a heavy presence descended. La Llorona, we know you're here, Lorraine whispered, her voice steady but filled with empathy. We want to help you find peace and release the Garcias from your torment. Please show yourself. As she spoke, the candles flickered wildly, and a mournful wail filled the room. The weeping woman's presence became palpable, and her ghostly form began to materialize. She hovered in the room, her spectral visage a haunting reminder of the darkness that had consumed her. Lorraine's psychic connection to La Llorona deepened, allowing her to glimpse the spirit's memories. She saw flashes of a time when the woman had been a loving mother, a time when her heart had been filled with joy. But then came the image of a river, of children lost to its depths, and a mother's descent into madness. Tears welled in Lorraine's eyes as she witnessed the weeping woman's torment. She saw the spirit's obsession with lost children, an obsession that had trapped her in an endless cycle of sorrow and rage. La Llorona was condemned to search for her own children in the afterlife, and in her despair, she believed that taking other children might somehow fill the void left by her own loss. The seance continued, a terrifying confrontation with the vengeful spirit. La Llorona's cries grew louder and more anguished, but Lorraine was determined to reach the spirit within the malevolence. She knew that there was still a spark of humanity buried beneath the centuries of grief. Ed stood by Lorraine's side, his hand tightly gripping hers. Together, they called upon the weeping woman to let go of her rage, to find the forgiveness that would release her from her curse. It was a battle of wills, a clash of darkness and light. As the seance reached its climax, La Llorona's spectral form wavered, and her cries grew fainter. It was a moment of intense spiritual confrontation, a pivotal point in their quest to banish the curse. The weeping woman's form began to dissipate, and her presence receded. The room felt lighter, as if the weight of centuries of sorrow had lifted, if only for a moment. The Warrens had made a connection with the spirit, a connection that held the promise of redemption. The confrontation with La Llorona was a harrowing experience, a glimpse into the depths of darkness and despair. But it was also a crucial step in their mission to uncover the truth behind the curse and to find a way to release the weeping woman from her torment. As the seance concluded, Ed and Lorraine Warren knew that their battle with the vengeful spirit was far from over. They had touched the heart of the darkness that consumed La Llorona, and the journey to break the curse and protect the Garcias would demand all of their courage and resilience. Chapter 7: A Race Against Time. In the aftermath of the seance with La Llorona, the Warrens knew that they were racing against time to break the curse that had ensnared the Garcia family. The weeping woman's relentlessness was a constant threat, and her obsession with lost children remained at the heart of her malevolence. Lorraine's psychic abilities became the linchpin of their investigation. Her visions, though haunting, provided crucial clues about La Llorona's past and her weaknesses. The Warrens knew that to banish the spirit, they had to delve deeper into the mysteries that bound her to the town. One evening, as the sun set over the adobe rooftops, Lorraine sat in a room dimly lit by candles, her eyes closed as she focused her psychic energy. Her visions took her back in time, to a period when the town was a thriving community, and Maria, the woman who would become La Llorona, was a loving mother. Lorraine saw the river where Maria's children had met their tragic end, the place where the darkness had taken root. She witnessed the depths of Maria's grief, her agony at the loss of her children, and her descent into madness. It was a story of heartbreak and despair, and it was the key to understanding the weeping woman's curse. Ed, on the other hand, sought assistance from the town's elders, who held the knowledge of the ancient traditions and the legends that had been passed down through generations. These wise individuals, their faces weathered by time and experience, spoke of La Llorona as if she were a part of the very land itself. They shared their insights about the spirit's weaknesses, the rituals that might appease her, and the significance of water in her curse. The town's elders spoke of an ancient ceremony, a rite of passage that had been used to banish La Llorona in the past. It involved offerings to the river, a way to quell the spirit's insatiable thirst for lost children. As Ed listened to their words, he felt a glimmer of hope. The knowledge they possessed was a beacon of light in the darkness. It was a plan, a way to confront the curse and put an end to the weeping woman's reign of terror. The Warrens' investigation was no longer confined to the Garcia residence. It extended throughout the town and into the depths of its history. Lorraine's visions and the town's elders' wisdom converged, creating a clearer picture of the weeping woman's curse and the path to its resolution. Their mission was now a race against time, a relentless pursuit of the knowledge and understanding needed to break the curse. The darkness that had haunted the town for centuries was unraveling before their eyes, and the Warrens knew that their journey was far from over. They were determined to confront La Llorona and save the Garcia family from the relentless threat that had consumed their lives. Chapter 8: La Llorona's Origins. The town's elders had shared the legends, but it was the Warrens' relentless pursuit of the truth that led them to uncover the tragic story of the woman who became La Llorona. The details of Maria's life revealed a heartbreaking narrative that added a layer of complexity to the curse they were battling. With the guidance of the town's archives and conversations with the elders, Ed and Lorraine learned of Maria, a young woman known for her radiant beauty. She had been the object of admiration in the town, and her vanity had been as alluring as her looks. The people spoke of her with a mix of envy and fascination, but they also whispered about her obsession with her own image. Maria's beauty had once been a source of pride, but it had become her downfall. Her time by the river, gazing at her reflection, had grown from moments of harmless vanity into hours of obsession. Her children, three innocent souls, had paid the price for her preoccupation. Lorraine's visions deepened their understanding of Maria's tragic story. She saw glimpses of a time when the woman had been a loving mother, her laughter and affection for her children filling their lives with warmth and happiness. But it was the image of a river, dark and forbidding, that dominated her visions. It was the river where she had lost her children, the river that had become a symbol of her guilt. As Lorraine delved deeper into Maria's memories, she felt the woman's anguish, her overwhelming grief when her children were taken from her. She saw the pivotal moment when Maria, in a fit of despair, had drowned her own offspring. The realization of her actions had shattered her sanity, and she had met a tragic end herself. The revelation was a heartbreaking one, as it exposed the roots of La Llorona's curse. It was not just a spirit seeking vengeance. It was a mother who had lost her children and was bound by guilt and despair. La Llorona's obsession with lost children was a reflection of the darkness that had consumed her, a darkness born of her own actions. The complexity of the case deepened, as the weeping woman's curse was no longer simply a malevolent force, but a tragic figure trapped in a cycle of torment. The Warrens now faced a dilemma, for the curse was not just a supernatural entity to be banished, it was a tortured soul seeking redemption. The revelations about La Llorona's origins added a layer of compassion to their investigation, even as the threat she posed remained undeniably real. Ed and Lorraine knew that to confront the curse, they had to find a way to release the spirit from her torment, a task that would require not only their expertise, but also their empathy. Their mission was far from over, and the darkness that had shrouded the town for centuries was still a formidable adversary. The complexities of the case weighed heavily on their shoulders, but the Warrens were determined to find a way to bring peace to the weeping woman and protect the Garcia family from the relentless threat that had engulfed them. Chapter 9: A Desperate Battle. As the Warrens delved deeper into the complexities of the La Llorona curse, they could feel the malevolent spirit's power growing stronger with each passing day. The town, once serene, had transformed into a battleground of supernatural forces, and the weeping woman's relentless pursuit of the Garcia family had reached a fever pitch. The night was silent, but the atmosphere was charged with a sense of foreboding as Ed and Lorraine prepared for the climactic confrontation with La Llorona. Their research had revealed the tragic origins of the curse, but it had also unearthed the deep complexity of the spirit's torment. It was no longer just a malevolent force, but a tormented soul seeking redemption. The weeping woman's presence had become an inescapable reality, her anguished cries echoing through the town. The moon hung high in the night sky, casting an ethereal glow over the landscape, and the atmosphere felt electric with the tension that preceded a great battle. Ed and Lorraine stood in the living room of the Garcia residence, their determination unwavering, their faith in their abilities resolute. The Garcia family huddled together, clutching religious symbols for protection, their faces etched with fear and hope. Isabella, their missing daughter, was the linchpin of the weeping woman's obsession, and her fate hung in the balance. Lorraine's psychic abilities allowed her to sense the weeping woman's presence nearby. The room seemed to grow colder, and a mournful wail filled the air. La Llorona's spectral form materialized, her eyes filled with torment, her white gown billowing like a shroud. Ed and Lorraine felt the weight of the centuries of sorrow that had consumed the spirit. It was a tragedy that had persisted through time, and they knew that they had to find a way to confront the darkness that had bound La Llorona. The Battle of Wills began as they called upon the weeping woman to release her grip on the Garcia family and find the forgiveness that would free her from the curse. La Llorona's cries filled the room, a haunting lament that seemed to shake the very foundation of the house. The confrontation was harrowing, a clash of forces both dark and light, a struggle that spanned the realms of the living and the dead. Ed and Lorraine knew that they had to face not only the weeping woman, but also their own fears, for the fate of Isabella and the Garcia family hung in the balance. As the seance reached its climax, the weeping woman's spectral form wavered, her cries growing weaker. It was a pivotal moment, a test of their resolve and their ability to confront the darkness that had tormented La Llorona for centuries. With a final plea for redemption, the weeping woman's form began to dissipate, and her presence receded. The room felt lighter, as if the weight of the centuries of sorrow had lifted, if only for a moment. The battle was far from over, but they had touched the heart of the darkness that consumed La Llorona, and it had relented, if only temporarily. As the seance concluded, the room fell into an eerie silence. The weeping woman had not been banished, but a connection had been made, a glimmer of hope had emerged. The Warrens knew that the battle was not yet won, and they were prepared to face whatever challenges lay ahead to bring an end to the curse and protect the Garcia family from the relentless threat that had engulfed them. Chapter 10: Redemption and Closure. The town had been transformed by the battle with La Llorona, its streets filled with a sense of unease and the whispers of the weeping woman's final confrontation. The Warrens, together with the town's residents, were determined to find a way to break the curse that had plagued them for centuries and bring closure to the harrowing case. With the knowledge gained from their research and the insights of the town's elders, Ed and Lorraine had uncovered the tragic origins of the La Llorona curse. The spirit was not just a malevolent force. She was a mother who had lost her children and had become a tormented soul seeking redemption. It was a complexity that added a layer of compassion to their mission. The town's residents, upon learning of the weeping woman's tragic past, came together in a collective effort to assist the Warrens. They had seen the darkness that had haunted their community, and they were determined to put an end to it. Their unity became a source of strength, a bond that would help them confront the curse that had plagued their town for so long. The plan was to perform the ancient ceremony that had been used to banish La Llorona in the past. It involved offerings to the river, a way to quell the spirit's insatiable thirst for lost children. The town's residents, led by Ed and Lorraine, gathered at the riverbank, their offerings a symbol of their willingness to find a resolution. As the ceremony began, the atmosphere was charged with both hope and apprehension. The air seemed to vibrate with the presence of the weeping woman, her mournful cries echoing through the night. It was a climactic moment, a final battle of wills that would determine the fate of the curse. The offerings, carefully chosen to represent the town's unity and compassion, were placed into the flowing waters of the river. The weeping woman's spectral form appeared, her presence a haunting reminder of the darkness that had consumed her for centuries. Lorraine, her psychic abilities as keen as ever, called upon the weeping woman to find forgiveness and release her from the curse. The town's residents joined in, their voices raised in a collective plea for redemption. As they chanted and offered their prayers, the weeping woman's spectral form wavered. Her cries grew fainter, and her anguished expression softened. It was a moment of profound transformation, a shift from darkness to light. The weeping woman's form began to dissipate, and her presence receded. The room felt lighter, as if the weight of centuries of sorrow had lifted. It was a bittersweet moment, a mixture of closure and sadness. The weeping woman was not just a malevolent force, she was a tormented soul, and she had found her redemption. With the curse broken, the town's residents felt a sense of relief and closure that they had longed for. They had confronted the darkness that had haunted their community, and they had found a way to bring an end to it. But the true test lay in the return of Isabella to her family. As the ceremony concluded, the waters of the river seemed to ripple with a sense of finality. Isabella's fate hung in the balance, and the Garcia family, their faces etched with fear and hope, held their breath. It was then that a whisper of movement in the water caught their attention. Isabella's form, soaked and trembling, emerged from the river. She was alive, her eyes wide with astonishment and confusion. The weeping woman had released her, her obsession with lost children finally quelled. The town's residents gathered around the Garcia family, their faces filled with relief and joy. The weeping woman's curse had been broken, and the town was free from the centuries of darkness that had plagued it. The Warrens, though weary from their harrowing battle, knew that they had succeeded in bringing redemption and closure to the weeping woman. It was a bittersweet conclusion to a case that had tested their abilities and their compassion. As the town's residents celebrated their newfound peace, Ed and Lorraine watched, their hearts heavy with the knowledge of the tragic story that had unfolded. La Llorona had been a malevolent force, but she was also a mother seeking redemption, and her story had touched their souls. The harrowing case of La Llorona was over, but its echoes would linger in the memories of those who had been touched by the weeping woman's curse. The town had found closure, but the complexity of the case would remain with Ed and Lorraine, a reminder of the darkness they had confronted and the compassion they had shown in the face of relentless torment. Hello, fellow fiction fans. I'm thrilled you're enjoying Muted Gamer Fiction. Your support means the world to me. If you're loving our stories, please like, comment, and subscribe. Your engagement fuels our storytelling. I'd love to hear from you. Share fanfic ideas or just say hi in the comments. Let's build this community together. Thanks for being part of Muted Gamer Fiction. Keep listening, and your support keeps the stories coming. Can't wait to see your ideas. Happy listening, and remember to like, comment, and subscribe. See you in the next chapter.